Welcome. I'm Ted Sheriff, Park Manager of Quail Hollow State Park. Quail Hollow State Park, in conjunction with the Quail Hollow Volunteer Association, recognizing a need for greater public awareness of the declining condition of our natural environment, hosted a roundtable discussion on environmental values. Experts in many areas of environmental study were invited to the park to offer presentations covering a wide range of interests pertaining to various topics of our natural world and our human role in it. The following program is one in a series to emerge from that discussion. Hello and welcome to our roundtable discussion of environmental values. Welcome to Quail Hollow State Park. And I truly want to welcome you to Quail Hollow State Park. It's a pleasure to do so. And Quail Hollow State Park, briefly, is a little different type park for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and we're real pleased that it is. It fills a special niche in the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and has a very particular focus. And some of you may know the park well. Some of you may have noticed on your visit here today, on your entrance, that you didn't see the typical lake and campground and so on. And that's part of that special niche and special theme of this state park. It is devoted to the educational study and appreciation of our outdoor world. And as a part of our pursuit of that theme, we are real pleased to have you here today with us for a roundtable discussion on environmental values, which will be sociologically oriented, should be applicable, should have something for every one of you, if not many things, to think about and take home and perhaps live out, we hope, in the future. There's a number of deserving thank yous which I wish to extend before we open the actual discussion portion. And I want to first of all thank the other half of the steering committee, perhaps first and foremost, for a great deal of devotion and hard work in presenting this and bringing it together. And you'll be seeing her throughout the day, and that's Park Naturalist Barbara Fiocca. Would you raise?
To conclude our program, I welcome Dr. Walter Macier from the University of Akron. Field experience includes research studies in the Austrian Alps, Japan, the Himalaya, and North America, including the Sierras, Rocky Mountains, and Yukon, Alaska, where he does pollination studies. He has produced over 40 publications on pollination ecology, and subjects taught at the University of Akron include botany, bioethics, and evolutionary biology. Welcome, Dr. Macier.
Thank you, Barbara. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to address you today. And being the last speaker, I have compassion on the multitudes. I realize that the head can't absorb more than the tail can tolerate. You'll recognize that some of the things that I say have already been spoken about in this symposium, so I'm really wrapping up quite a few things, trying to put them together. My method will be as much to ask questions as to give answers. This is the way I teach my evolution discussion course and also my bioethics course. And I guarantee that my students don't end up as total skeptics not knowing what to believe, even though I play the devil's advocate in every issue that's brought up. But it is rather stimulating. I think it is very profitable for students, even though I may end up as Socrates by asking too many questions. Bioethics, what is it? It's an intellectual discipline for the establishment and application of rules for human conduct in relation to the living world. In other words, we're going to make rules for our own behavior. It's like asking a criminal to judge his own case. Or is it? Who else can do it? If we don't make up the rules for our own conduct, there either won't be any conduct or there won't be any people to have conduct. It's in regard to the living world, not just ourselves. Very often we get the impression that, well, all the world revolves around us. Oh, does it really? If we were to die today, how many organisms would be affected? Our domestic animals, our domestic plants. The rest of them would go on as if nothing had happened, or as if something good had happened. Finally, we can survive in a world that has been cluttered up by this God's mistake. The last creation was the worst, or maybe not. Do we really need bioethics? Well, if not, what would we follow? Instinct. What's instinct? Well, it's sort of a set of rules that the organisms have built into them, and they know just what to do. You can work it all the way down to the molecular level and say, it's the DNA code. Can we really work by instinct alone in deciding what's good and what's bad in regard to biodiversity, in regard to saving the environment? Well, we're the only ones that don't have a good system for working on instinct alone, and that's the problem. We have too much freedom in the way that we behave, in the way that we think, and this gives us trouble. But we have to apply rules. If we don't, we're going to have chaos and wholesale destruction of living things. We're pretty sure of that. What is mankind's place in nature? In the first talk today, Ruth spoke about, is mankind a part of nature, or is man apart from nature? If we emphasize the differences between mankind and all the other organisms, we are really distinct. But from a biologist's point of view, are you really distinct? How much genetics do you have that's different from that of a chimpanzee? The fascinating thing is why we are so different from chimpanzees when our genetics tells us we're just about the same. That's quite a problem. Theologically, was nature created for mankind? People interpret the Bible and say, well, of course. God said, here, go and multiply, and here's everything that you need. Go and subdue the earth. Beat it into subjection. Make sure that you domesticate everything. You don't need wild things. They're just potentially domesticated organisms, animals and plants. Outside of that, what do you need? This is a problem with Noah and the ark. If there are 1 million species of insects and it takes 2 to make more, that must have been a very buggy place for at least 40 days and 40 nights. Is that what it really meant? Maybe it meant something else. What purpose does nature serve for mankind? Unfortunately, religions almost universally, with deference to Father Connors here, consider a material world of material use for mankind. Ask somebody, what good is this plant? What good is this animal? And immediately, or if you're on the other end, if you're doing some work on something and somebody asks, what good is pedicularis, the lousewort, terrible name, that's what I study mainly. What good is it? Well, right away you try to say, you can make a pill for your pain, you can make a shingle for your roof, you make a crumb for your belly and a thread for your back. See, that's what good it is. Was the earth meant to be subdued and used for food, shelter, clothing, and medication? Is that all? The world is therefore a homocentric phenomenon, a man-centered phenomenon. If it's not good for man, what do you need it for? Or what does the whole world or the universe need it for? Not a theocentric one, a God-centered one. Very often the natural sciences and religious circles are relegated to the back of the bus in favor of theology, the queen of the sciences, and philosophy, its handmaid. Francis of Assisi, a rare individual who considered himself a part of nature, along with Sister Moon and Brother Sun, you may have seen the movie, was identified as the patron saint of ecologists in 1979 by Pope John Paul II. That event passed almost unnoticed in religious circles. Why? Is it unimportant that we recognize that we are part of nature and can easily destroy it, as we are now doing with the rainforest, the alpine meadows, the conifer forests, and the deserts? We speak about the rainforest all the time, or maybe the Pacific Coast rainforest with the spotted owl in it. That's not the only area that's being destroyed by humans. I work in the alpine meadows. You'd say, oh, well, you're away from human disturbance up there. You work in the Himalaya. Oh, sure I do, 10,000 feet and up. And what's up there? Just Elysian fields of flowers and little insects that I study. I study pollination, of course, and little animals, sometimes big animals, but everything is right with the world up there. Not exactly. One season we went out to study 4 species of the plant I work with. We had records and everything. We went up and started really searching around there, doing a lot of climbing. We found 1. Since 1920, 3 of the 4 species are gone. They may be completely extinct. I don't know. If they're endemics, local organisms, then they will be extinct, because it doesn't take much to destroy organisms in a very restricted geographic place. Well, is it unimportant that we realize that we are a part of nature and can easily destroy it, as if we are now doing in the rainforest? Well, I think we have to. Maybe the alpine meadows aren't important to you because you don't study up there. I do. But should we graze them all? When I go up there, I see my plants. I see goats and sheep and cattle and even water buffalo. If you find a pond at 10,000 feet, there's a water buffalo sitting in it. These animals graze everything, and what's left? Well, maybe we should develop criteria first for a code of bioethics. What are the value judgments you're going to make? You'll have to. Aldo Leopold, who's been mentioned once before, has a collection of essays called the Sand County Almanac. And in it he said this: "The thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends to do otherwise." Integrity, stability, beauty. What does that mean? Integrity, everything is honest? No. It means you hold all things together. If you destroy part of an ecosystem, you destroy the whole thing. Maybe everything doesn't die at once, but it suffers because the other organisms, creating a balance between them, are lost. Stability. Good God, evolution is going on. Well, maybe you shouldn't associate the two terms, but some people don't. But evolution is going on, and you want to save everything? Species go extinct naturally, even if humans weren't around. Let them go. That's all right with me. Isn't it all right with you? Well, maybe not. Stability doesn't mean stagnation. It simply means that when an ecosystem changes, it changes as a system and not one organism by itself. If you tinker with one thing in an ecosystem, you tinker with everything. That's the story of fixing a clock. When you take it apart, save all the pieces. Beauty. Oh, but that's in the eye of the beholder. One man's meat's another man's poison. You love it, I hate it. But does that mean that we should arrange biotic communities in such a way that the majority can appreciate them? Should we sort of tinker and manage with things? This is the big issue between the National Park Service and the Forest Service. Forest Service is in charge of a land of many uses. Some people say a land of many abuses. But the national parks are supposed to be pristine areas as much as possible where the ecosystem is preserved and all the organisms in it. Bentley Glass, who was one-time chancellor of the State University of New York, said, "I believe that only a religious ethic toward nature will serve to protect us, an ethic that regards man as a trustee of nature for the welfare of all people now and into the remote future." This is where stewardship comes in. Why do you have to take care of nature? Can't nature take care of itself? Yes, if you can take care of yourself and not disturb the rest of it. If, however, you have to live here, you're going to disturb it. You know, if you go to the national park or a state park and you see a sign that says, "Leave nothing but footprints and take nothing but" what? Pictures. You've left footprints, haven't you? You've squeezed something down. There might have been a seed there. There might have been a little plant there, or an ant. Well, step on ants. That's good for making rain, some people think. But should we step on ants? Maybe not. Some people accuse Albert Schweitzer of being just a little off the deep end and his reverence for nature. Was he or wasn't he? Well, if it's a religious ethic, what is religion? Anything you want it to be. Well, we assume that religion is a binding code of belief and behavior. Oh, but isn't that ethics? Yes. But in regard to ultimate reality, what happens eventually to us? Well, then maybe Bentley Glass is right. That a religious ethic is important because it has no termination in time. It's mentioned here that, well, eventually 5 billion years we'll be all burned up on the the sun sort of swells up and gets hot and cooks us. But maybe not that ultimate. But shouldn't we really think in terms of long-term reality in preserving things? Van Rensselaer-Potter wrote a book on bioethics published in 1979. And he said, "We must now face up to the fact that human ethics cannot be separated from a realistic understanding of ecology in the broadest sense. You have to understand what's going on before you start doing things." There are some misguided efforts where, Arbor Day is something else, let's go out and plant trees. The more trees you plant, the better off we'll be because we can sniff more oxygen. What kind of tree? Oh, I didn't think about that. Where? Well, just plant more trees. Well, you don't do that. As a matter of fact, if you want an old field that you plowed for a long time to grow up into a forest that's going to stay for a long time, what should you plant? Nothing. Why? You want it to stay barren forever? It won't. What will it do? In ecology, we speak about old field succession. An old field that is left to itself does what? Provided it doesn't erode away. It establishes a community that will survive because the seeds came from plants that are native to the area. If they're not, well, they either are invaders or else there's something that won't survive. So in this case, why don't we just leave nature alone? Or we can't, but we don't have to disturb it too much. But Van Potter says ethical values cannot be separated from biological facts. Then there's another book by Schumacher. Anybody read it? Do you know what the title is? Small is Beautiful. This is particularly appropriate around here where we have some people who seem to believe that, at least that's the way they act. They're called the Amish. They believe small is beautiful or simple is good. They don't have all the modern conveniences of other people, but they seem to live a reasonably happy life on a low grade in terms of technical advance. One of my friends moved out here from Akron to get away from the crowd. And she couldn't understand why the Amish were moving out. You know, she asked me, I told her, what did I tell her? Because you're moving in, that's why. When everybody's moving in, there goes small is beautiful. It's not beautiful and it's not small anymore. This is a real good one. Marston Bates once wrote a book on the nature of natural history. And he was a teacher, and he was recounting his ideas and his lectures. And he said, well, one day I was talking about butterflies. And I was talking about the taxonomy, the classification, the structure, the function, and the ecology of butterflies. Oh boy. Then there was one student who at the end of class, there's one in every class does it, and I don't know why. Good thing there aren't more than one. But anyway, the student asked, what good are butterflies? How would you answer that question? What good are butterflies? Are you going to say you can eat them? You can make medicine from them? Now, he had an answer. Maybe it wasn't polite to answer a question with a question, but he answered, what good are you? Why is that so funny? Because the misguided student used himself as a criterion for the good of butterflies. It's kind of the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? Butterflies are good because they're here. Everything that exists is good. So what good are people? Maybe the student couldn't answer that because he didn't really think of it in that direction. Well, criteria that we have in bioethics must be uniquely human, not just animal. We can't just say that what's good for the pig and the chicken and the cow is good for us. Only mankind can understand creation, but not without serious and continuous study. Whoever reduces the value of nature to human material needs is insulting not only nature, but also other humans. Not to forget the Creator, if you believe in a Creator. We cannot love what we don't appreciate. We can't appreciate what we don't understand. We can't understand what we don't study. Someone once said, to a person who is uninstructed in natural history, a walk through a meadow or through a forest is like a walk through an art museum with 9/10 of the paintings turned to the wall. Can you imagine doing that? Go through an art museum and you see almost nothing. There's plenty there, but you couldn't recognize it because the paintings were turned over to the wall. This is why it's very important that before we do anything in regard to disturbing the environment, we understand what the environment is doing, what the organisms are doing in it, so that when our code of bioethics is finally established, we realize that we did it knowledgeably. Oh, we can make mistakes. We're not perfect. I have a PhD, I'm supposed to be, but even I'm not perfect. Unfortunately, it's not just a case of walking through an art gallery with the paintings turned to the wall. What we're doing now is what? In a metaphor. Destroying the paintings. We'll never be able to see them. We'll never be able to turn them over by education so that people will eventually see them. If they are destroyed, the title of a book by Tom Elias is Extinction is, you may know the book, Forever. You can't reconstruct species. You say, oh, but we have genetic engineering. Shucks, you can put these genes together and you can make everything. I have a funny little cartoon on my door. I have lots of cartoons on my doors because when the students are waiting, they get a little bored waiting. So they look at these funny things. And here's a little boy with thick glasses. That means he's intellectual. He tries to study. And he's playing not with his little chemistry set, but with his little geneticist set. And here he has a thing with a snail shell and an elephant's trunk and some other kind of tail. He's putting genes together and making new kinds of organisms, just the way you make stinks and explosions with chemicals when you mix them. Well, we seem to think with great confidence, overconfidence really, that we can make any organism that we want, and if we destroy it, there's the formula for the genes, stick them all together, and away they go. It's not that simple, not nearly that simple, so extinction really is forever. Unfortunately, mankind is exterminating the paintings in creation under the pretext of feeding, housing, and medicating a growing population. That's a brazen lie. Human greed is at the root of destruction of the rainforest plant species. The poor people in the rainforest are paid to destroy their own very home. They're paid almost nothing compared to the profits of foreign investors in the logging operations. And if after the forest is not destroyed, but cut and taken elsewhere, then plantations will spring up. On what kind of soil? Lateritic soil. It's extremely poor, because all the organic matter in the rainforest is where? In the trees. There's almost nothing in the soil. If you take the trees away, there's just nothing, period. You can use lots of fertilizer. In a few years, you're going to have a problem. Monoculture in the former rainforest is not the answer. Well then, what bioethical values and norms shall we establish? These are suggestions. We may follow them or not. Number one, every species has a right to exist, even mosquitoes. I was working on Mount Rainier this past summer, and we were working down in some meadows pretty low. I mean, high in the mountains, but a dip where there's a lot of water around. Lots of mosquitoes, too. And some backpackers were going through, and they were talking about what we were doing, and I said that we were studying these things, that they have academic value at least. And he said, boy, what good are mosquitoes? Well, maybe I should have asked him, what good are you? But I suggested, well, some mosquitoes pollinate little habenaria orchids, so they're important for the orchids. Oh, okay. But he wasn't satisfied. It had to be good for him and not for somebody else. Secondly, mankind has a right to exist, but not at the expense of other species. You say, well, look, we've gotten rid of smallpox. What have we gotten rid of? A bacterium that will cause the disease and may kill you. Isn't it good to get rid of all that genetic material in the smallpox bacteria? Are you saying yes, Ruth? No. Why not? There may be a lot of good stuff in those things, but we just said search and destroy. We got rid of the whole thing. There's nothing left. That's right. So thirdly, species exist in communities and habitats. Natural areas are absolutely essential for the existence of species. Some years ago, I worked with the Fish and Wildlife Service and also the Corps of Engineers on what you might know the furbished lousewort, the first plant put on the federal endangered list. And why did we do that? Because they wanted to save the lousewort. What's wrong? It's been living in the St. John River Valley between Brunswick and New Brunswick and Maine probably for tens of thousands of years. Well, they wanted to save it because the Corps of Engineers was going to dam the river. Dam this, dam that. 2 big power dams to put across the river. So they wanted me to find out the reproductive capacity of this plant, how it could be moved. It's a root parasite, partially, so you can't move it very easily. And so I told them that, you could possibly move it, but it's going to be a problem. Fortunately, the dam was decommissioned, so it's not being produced, so the furbished lousewort is smiling with its leaves all the way to the survival bank. But we must keep the habitat. You can't transplant those plants and put them somewhere else. They have to stay there. It's the climate. It's the weather. It's everything else, the soil that they live in. It's the same thing for animals. If you want to save the spotted owl, you don't put them in cages. The editor of the Akron Beacon Journal responded to this save the lousewort thing by saying, well, they're so important, why don't you put the plants in pots and take them away? I said, well, if you want to study human beings, why don't you do the same thing? Put them in some cages and take them away into your lab. It doesn't work. Fourthly, all human beings must be taught the human value of the living world and its parts. What is it that makes it so important for us as humans? Feed and breed, that's not the answer. That's the answer for survival of the species, biologically. But if we were to survive as a human species, we have to understand, we have to have human values that are unique. And we shouldn't have to prostitute our rationale for why something should exist in terms of physical necessity or physical welfare of humans. Fifth, religion must understand and appreciate the truths of ecological science and incorporate them in its codes. This is important, because if God did create the universe and did create all of life, which after all is only a skin 14 miles thick surrounding the Earth, and we don't know of any life that's existing now elsewhere in the universe. If we are to preserve that life, then we have to understand it, and religion should be included with it in terms of ultimate reality as far as you want to carry it. And finally, extinction is inevitable in nature. Species do go extinct. Jurassic Park, to the contrary, those dinosaurs don't really run around anymore. There are many plants and animals that have gone extinct. It's nice to be able to study them in fossil form. It would have been better if they were alive, but we have no right to accelerate extinction. We ought to preserve things, but we ought to understand them, not just have them standing there. Understand them, study them. This is my talk to my students. I tell them, go out and see things in nature. I take them with me almost every summer, and we work in the field. The students get a new appreciation of these things in terms of how they work, where they live, and why they do so. I think if we do this, then all of the speakers today will have contributed to your knowledge, and I hope that I have done so. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. We hope you'll join us again when we present the next segment of a roundtable discussion on environmental values.